Asta is an orphan raised under the care of a church in Haggai after his mother abandons him on the church's doorstep. After turning 15 years old, Asta receives a 5-leaf clover grimoire with an anti-magic devil inside. He joins the Clover Kingdom's Black Bull squad of the Magic Knights and becomes a 3rd-class junior Magic Knight and temporarily a Royal Knight. Powers and abilities. Magic. Anti-magic. Asta uses this unique energy to nullify magic. Despite not having the ability to use magic, Asta's control over his anti-magic energy, as well as the very uniqueness of this power itself, has earned him the rank of an arcane stage mage. Bull Thrust. After being flung through the air, the user points both the Demon Slayer sword and Demon Dweller sword in front of themselves. Any spells or magic lifeforms that are in front the user are dispelled after coming in contact with the swords. The user is also incapable of changing direction without the help of a spatial magic user. The user could also use just one of the swords while channeling anti-magic, referred to as one-horn bull thrust. Black Meteorite. After coating their body with anti-magic, the user charges towards a target, dealing a powerful slash once they are in range. Any magic-based attack that comes in contact with the spell is cut right through with no harm to the user. The user is even capable of changing direction regardless of the speed at which they are traveling. This technique could be used with the Demon Slayer sword or the Demon Dweller sword. Black Hurricane. After coating their body with anti-magic, the user spins rapidly and is pulled toward magic spells, which are dispelled by the swinging Demon Slayer sword. This spell is capable of nullifying an entire field of magic and magical traps in an instant. Demon Slayer sword, Black Divider. While wielding the Demon Slayer sword, the user pushes and condenses the anti-magic to the edges of the blade. Its size and reach can extend to several times its normal size. Like other anti-magic attacks, it is drawn toward magic, making it difficult for mages to dodge. The flat side of the sword could still be used to reflect an attack, and the larger size of the blade allows for wider coverage in a single swing. At its largest, Black Divider is capable of reflecting a massive ball of fire and ice. Black Slash. While holding the Demon Dweller sword, the user fills the sword with anti-magic, swings it, and releases the energy as a flying slash which cuts through magic and carries enough force to knock an opponent down, back into a wall or up through a ceiling. The slash does not appear to cut the opponent, but can knock them unconscious. The user could swing the sword in rapid succession to create a flurry of slashes for targeting multiple opponents. Devil Possession. As a wielder of a 5-leaf clover grimoire, Asta is connected to Liba, who possesses anti-magic, which grants him access to this energy. The more power he draws on, the more devil-like his appearance becomes. Asta agrees to a bargain with Liba, his right arm, in exchange for more of his power. This increase in power enables him to negate a gravity singularity and decode additional weapons and anti-magic. However, he is limited to 50 seconds of usage. After undergoing the Devil Binding ritual, Asta forges a contract with Liba to share power as equals, and after training for a couple of days, Asta and Liba learn to unite, which greatly enhances their anti-magic abilities. However, their union has not been perfected yet and the transformation only lasts for about 5 minutes. As time elapses, the crossbars of the star on his chest expand into circles, indicating how much time he has left in the form. Abilities. Expert Swordsman. Asta initially has a rough style due to having an unconventional sword and having only received basic training from Fanzel Kruger. Over time he develops greater skill through battle experience, additional swords, and ki sensing, as well as learning from his multiple battles alongside and against other magic swordsmen. No magic power. Asta possesses no mana and so is unable to use magic. This enables Asta to wield anti-magic without suffering the weakening effects since he has no magic to drain. This also makes him undetectable to mana sensors, and immune to the life-draining substance of the underworld. Enhanced strength. Asta possesses a high level of physical strength, able to do 1,000 single-handed handstand push-ups, to swing heavy swords single-handedly, and to punch holes in rock walls with no injury to himself. Asta can swing his swords with such force that his opponents break stone when they crash. The Witch Queen further enhances his arm strength using blood magic. Enhanced speed. Asta is capable of moving in an above-average speed, which causes William Vangeance to think that he has used magic to aid himself. Enhanced durability. Asta possesses a high durability, as seen when he is able to keep standing up, despite receiving numerous attacks from Heath. He is even able to emerge from Lick's attempted cave-in relatively unharmed alongside Yami. Enhanced instinct. Asta possesses a heightened level of instinct, as demonstrated when he can unconsciously move his body in the best way to defend himself. Ki. A principle originating from Yami's homeland, this allows Asta to use a sixth sense and to perceive and react to unseen attacks and people. Keen intellect. Despite his hyperactive and headstrong nature, Asta has shown to be intelligent and thoughtful in his own right. He understands many situations he finds himself in and can be tactical when needed, such as cutting out curses with his swords and thinking of different tactics in battle. He is shown to be a fast learner, as he quickly learned to use Ki from Yami's guide in the middle of combat, as well as tapping into the dormant powers of the Demon Slayer sword by simply observing its original owner fighting. Anti-magic weapons. Demon Slayer sword. Asta's first sword can be enlarged by extending anti-magic from the edges of the blade, while the flat side of the sword can be used to deflect spells. After 6 months of training in the Heart Kingdom, Asta has gained the ability to remotely control the anti-magic within the sword, allowing him to just summon the sword back to himself by holding his hand open and calling its name, as well as ride it through the air. The sword takes the form of a massive greatsword that is mostly covered in dirt and scuff marks. The blade and the hilt are separated from each other and connected by a fuller. The hilt appears as a handle to a normal longsword. The blade is huge and has a pointed tip while the base is pointing inward, creating an angle. The sword is capable of cutting magic with its edges and reflecting them with its flat. However, when it is used to cut anything else, it would be reduced to a blunt sword that uses blunt trauma to cause damage to the opponent. Although, the tip of the sword is still sharp enough to create a cut wound. The sword can remove mental enchantment by tapping the person's head with a crossguard. Anti-magic can be extended from the edges of the blade and condensed into a larger blade, thus expanding the width and length of the sword. This property is the basis of the Black Divider. This increased size allows for wider defenses and longer ranged attacks. By manipulating the anti-magic within the sword, the user can make the sword hover and fly through the air. The user could also jump on and ride the sword, or control the sword remotely and attack from a distance. Demon Dweller Sword. Asta's second sword can release projected slashes of anti-magic, allowing him to cut through spells from a distance. It can also borrow the magic from the people around him, allowing him to release slashes that possess the properties of other magic attributes. Besides Licht, only Asta can wield this sword because he possesses no mana, as other mages would not be able to use any magic while in contact with the sword and would have their mana reserves depleted. The sword has black markings on the blade and is mostly covered in dirt. The sword also has a heavily ornate hilt with a four-sided guard, a grip with a spiral design, and a sphere for the pommel. The sword is capable of cutting magic with its edges and absorbing other people's magical power. However, when it is used to cut anything else, it is reduced to a blunt sword that uses blunt trauma to inflict damage on the opponent. The sword's original ability is to absorb spells and then to release that magic in a flying slash. After the sword has absorbed a certain amount of magical power, the black markings on it start glowing with a color corresponding to the absorbed magic attribute. At that moment, when the user swings the sword, it unleashes magic with similar properties as the absorbed magic attribute. Alternatively, it is also capable of being filled with anti-magic, releasing flying slashes composed entirely of anti-magic. Another ability the sword possesses is connecting the wielder to their allies. With this ability, the wielder could draw magic power from their allies over a large distance or could transmit magic and information to their allies. It has been noted that the sword passively absorbs magic from anyone holding it and is immensely heavy. This absorption ability can be used offensively by impaling an opponent and letting the sword drain the victim's magic power and weakening their enhancements. When the sword is wielded by Asta in Liba's Unite form, spikes and a knucklebow extend from the sword's guard, and the black slashes are much larger in size. Demon Destroyer Sword. Asta's third sword possesses an ability known as Causality Break, which allows it to generate anti-magic tendrils that can absorb and remove the aftereffects of spells. It can even negate reincarnation magic. Unlike the Demon Slayer and Demon Dweller swords, this sword has a unique blade end with a wide edge that appears to have a clover symbol at the top. When first seen, it is mostly covered in dirt until Licht picks it up and the dirt falls off to reveal a shiny blade. After it is absorbed into Asta's grimoire, it returns to its dirt-encrusted form. As well as cutting through magic and spells with its edges, the sword has a special ability, Causality Breaking Gakaiho, viz., Fate Release. It absorbs and removes the effects of spells by severing the cause and effect relationship. The sword emanates tendrils of anti-magic that touch those affected by magic and then draw back into the sword, turning the blade black. Since the ability affects causality, these tendrils negate not only the magic but also its effects, such as the tissue damage caused by a magical poison. The other anti-magic weapons are unable to do this and affect only active magic. This ability is even strong enough to negate reincarnation magic. When the sword is wielded by Asta in Liba's Unite form, a circle forms in the cross guard, and its magic neutralizing ability is amplified. Demon Slasher Katana. During their fight with Dante's Ogratis, Yami Sukiro lends Asta his katana. Asta's devil arm coats the sword in anti-magic, enabling it to deal heavy damage to Dante and to knock him unconscious. Afterward, the sword enters and is stored in his grimoire. The Demon Slasher Katana is an anti-magic weapon. Originally Yami Sukiro's katana, the sword is transformed by the anti-magic in Asta's devil arm when Yami passes the sword to Asta. Like the other anti-magic weapons, the katana is capable of cutting through magic and spells with its edge. It is also capable of releasing flying slashes of anti-magic. Personality. Asta generally is cheerful and hyperactive. He tends to shout to express his thoughts and goals, much to the annoyance of some of those around him, and often in spite of other people's opinions. One of the first examples of this is when he conveyed his goal of becoming a magic emperor during the Magic Knight's entrance exam, and told other people who jeered at him to be quiet. Asta's simple yet outgoing personality is frequently played to comedic effect during more serious situations. However, his strong tenacity interests Yami Sukiro enough to recruit him into his ranks, and his determination also leads him to possess an indomitable will. Asta's determination to never give up, added with his own steel fortitude during grueling or harsh battles, is a trait that becomes the basis for others to acknowledge him, such as Magna Swing. However, Asta is shown to have struggled accepting his lack of magic, using his boisterous attitude as a front to hide his insecurity. After having his arms broken and cursed by Veto, Asta nearly slips into a depression before talking and forcing himself to continue pushing onward. Because of his upbringing in the Forsaken region, Asta frequently receives cruel opinions and insults from almost everyone he meets. To counteract this, Asta appears to have developed a slightly sarcastic nature as he tries to defend himself. The regularity at which he's exposed to such degrading remarks is such that he now has a certain immunity to them, shown when he easily brushes them off without getting overly annoyed. However, Asta can still become irritated when others deeply insult his comrades. He will not hesitate to confront them as he tries to defend his friends. Asta also has a very strong sense of justice, which is shown during his fight against Heath Grice, as he believes that everyone deserves to be protected. It is also not limited to only his comrades but his enemies as well, as noted when he asks his fellow squadmates to take the unconscious Mars along with them while the dungeon is collapsing. He argues that their mission is only to explore a dungeon as they are not ordered to kill any enemies. Therefore, Asta seems to see the positive side of everyone and never takes an insult too seriously, as seen when he still befriends both Yuno and Noel Silva even after both had openly looked down on him. Even when Fauna is trying to kill him and his allies with all her power, he attempts to reason with her as a means to understand and talk her down from her rage, showing consideration for non-violent methods of solving conflict. He later continues to do this with the reincarnated elves, despite no success among repeated attempts. However, Asta also believes that those that have done wrong should work to actively make up for their wrongdoings. He always holds his enemies accountable for their misdeeds, regardless if he has forgiven them or not. He requests that Nej spend time in prison before promising to become his friend. He later demands that the weak and Ladros apologize to and help all the people he has harmed. In another example, he puts Radis into a submission hold during their next meeting, nearly breaking his arm until the latter successfully convinces him that he will use his powers to help the people in the capital rather than for revenge. His open, friendly, and non-judgmental attitude, indomitable will, and stubbornness has earned him the respect of almost everyone he meets, even nobles such as Klaus and Fugoli and Vermilion. It has also earned him the affection of numerous girls, though his love for Sister Lily, combined with his somewhat dense personality, has made him largely oblivious of this fact. This love for Lily and obliviousness also make him somewhat chivalrous and non-perverted, as he absolutely refused to try to peek on the girls while bathing at the hot spring. While an immensely endearing and honest person, who can win over people with his tenacity, Asta can come off as quite stupid to those around him. Asta is not exactly stupid, but growing up in an orphanage in the middle of nowhere has left him ignorant of many things that others consider common knowledge, and his headstrong nature makes him come across as a stereotypical musclehead with little to no brains. His naivete constantly leads him to blurt out things with little to no tact or care for the situation at hand, and his blind trust of people in the kingdom despite evidence to the contrary has made him very easy to fool, depending on the situation. His trusting, truthful nature has been taken advantage of by the courts, and he nearly spoke his guilt without thinking of the consequences while he was on trial. He is also very ignorant about many things in the kingdom and on its functions, which magic knights should know. With most of his squad mates is that he does not know many simple things such as how corrupt the system ruled by the nobles really is, which almost cost him and Marie their lives.